now we can actually officially get going now that we've got everything, I feel like, set up and everything.
Yeah, so few technical issues there. So, like I said, we were overdue for one of these because things have been going too smooth for us. So, anyway, got DrDabston with me as always, and this week got a special guest. We have Adico, who runs the Warchief tournament, weekly tournament, and also is a moderator of the AOE4 subreddit. So everybody, while he's busy with us, go over there and shitpost while he's busy. So
Which thankfully have. I will give a shout out to Name Not Literal, who is one of the few people who kind of stand up and said, "Hey, I want to moderate. I want to be a moderator." Back when we did like the December call out for anybody who wanted it, and he's just been putting in the work there to like help make the community better and just be there to, if anything nasty comes up, to hammer it out. So, I moderate, but the reality is that it really is a team effort between everybody involved.
Awesome, awesome. As it should be.
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. So why don't you go ahead and just kind of tell us about your gaming background, how you got into AOE4, and what your idea behind the Warchief Club was.
Yeah, for sure. So the funny thing is that I'm not like a full RTS gamer. I certainly grew up playing RTS. I played a lot of Age of Empires 2. I played quite a bit of like, God, what was the name of this other RTS that was just like Age of Empires 2, but Nations or something like that. Like there were three RTS in the 90s to 2000s that sort of get mixed up in my memory, but I played a lot of those. And then I kind of grew out of it. I ended up going through the like Sim City phase and just played Sim City and city builders and stuff like that. And then I kind of went into the thing that you expect most teenagers to go to, like Call of Duty, Battlefield, throughout that entire thing, right? The only console that I ever owned was a PlayStation 2, but then it's been PC all the way. So I've just stuck with that. And eventually, what ended up happening through liking first person shooters is that I fell into the horrible trap of playing Team Fortress 2. So I ended up playing like hundreds of hours of Team Fortress 2. I was a spy, and I used the item that like you can get killed, but it actually stealths you away. So the Dead Ringer, and I played a lot of that, and that eventually led me to the second trap, which is Overwatch. And I played a lot of Overwatch, and I got super into it, especially when like Overwatch League started getting going in 2018, and that was my sort of second rekindling of esports, because the first one was with StarCraft 2. Though I wasn't playing StarCraft 2, I was watching a lot of content related to StarCraft 2 on the hand of like John Bain, you probably know him as Total Biscuit, STPs, In Control, also another huge community figure, sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but super massive. And thankfully, we still have Day 9 and Artosis, who are two guys that I just can always hear talking about. And they sort of introduced me to the idea of StarCraft and esports at first. But because I never got involved in StarCraft 2, I never developed that deep love of esports that today I do have. So it was Overwatch the thing that introduced me to esports. It was the Overwatch League. I eventually wanted to like play competitively, and I ended up playing up to like a gold to platinum level in Overwatch, which is pretty amateurish. And what I quickly realized is that I suck at competitive games. I get a little bit panicky, and like I don't yell or anything like that. I just freeze. So I'm not a really good competitive player. But the thing that I do really well is think about competitive games. So I ended up becoming a coach for a couple of like platinum, diamond, and a little bit above teams. I never got into like contenders or anything like that, but I was certainly in conversation with a lot of people in those circles. And eventually, through my coaching, I ended up talking with a bunch of coaches, and we ended up building something called the coaching classroom, which was a Discord server for other coaches to talk with other coaches to like discuss about the meta, about how to properly train people. That was the big focus. It's like, okay, we know that training in Overwatch sucks right now. Like people are not training the way they should be. The fundamentals are not really being looked at. So how can we make that better? And the answer is communication. It's just talking with other coaches and realizing that, hey, this practice regime doesn't work. Do something different. And I stood with that for a couple of months. And in that time, more and more coaches jumped in. And because there was a lot of discussion in the server, we ended up going with a newsletter, which I wrote. And that was my introduction to writing. And so I started writing newsletters about what was being discussed in the coaching server, how the meta was developing, doing interviews, doing things like that. And that led me to being a freelance writer, which is
Okay.
sort of the thing that I do today. And I wrote for a company called Action Esports, which covers Overwatch as well as other sports. And I also wrote for most recently Team Liquid, but at that time with Action Esports, I was writing about Overwatch contenders in particular, which is like, if you imagine that EGC puts on the biggest events, and that would be the equivalent of Overwatch League. Contenders might be something like the Road to Wololo, this frequent event that is happening a lot of the time, but that has a highlight for like mid-size to lower end players that are really trying to develop their skills, and they're trying to face tougher and tougher opponents. That's sort of what Contenders is at the moment.
Gotcha.
And I was writing about that. And that is the environment that I particularly love about esports, is the development phase of talent. Like
Mm.
once you reach marine lore levels of gameplay, that's cool to see, and it's exciting, and it's amazing when a new evolution happens. But one of the things that I really loved looking at in Age of Empires 4, for instance, was Poppy Paul Wong, who didn't have a background of like being top players in other scenes, but certainly developed into now being really good players at the top of the scene. You know, top 32, top 16, kind of there. And that is what I really love about the esports side of things. So after a while, I realized I kind of wasn't into Overwatch too much. I really liked it, and I continue to like it. I'm watching the season right now, um, but I also wanted to explore other esports scenes. I really wanted to take a look at the niche competitive scenes that maybe are not getting the attention of like the mainstream. If you think a Dextero or esports.com, stuff like that write pieces about either streamers or your CS:GOs, your Valorant, your stuff like that. I wanted to look at the smaller competitive scenes, the ones that were more grassroots fed, and that ended up getting me a couple of freelance jobs with Action Esports to kick off a series that they continue today, where they explore these smaller competitive scenes. And the first one that I did was about a pseudo fighting game called Lethal League Blaze. Super fun game. But the one that relates to this whole introduction is Age of Empires 2. So I wrote about Age of Empires 2. I did interviews with people in Age of Empires 2. I became more involved in the sort of community, and I really liked it. It was the sort of thing that made me go, "Oh, this is like an interesting scene." It is an RTS, which is not that big of a deal right now, but it has a lot of support behind it. And from it, a couple of months after the video release is when, like in 2020, is when the Age of Empires Liquipedia wiki got started. And I knew Liquipedia from before, from my time in Overwatch, because it was like a center of conversation for a lot of the things. And I knew that the moment there was a wiki for Age of Empires, it was going to be a big moment. It was going to be something that was going to change the landscape of the scene, because it made it far more visible to people who were doing a lot of decisions on the grander scheme of things, right? So, like, not necessarily the end sponsor, but an organizer that now sees that Age of Empires is on Wikipedia is going to be like, well, how did it get there? Like, what is happening in this competitive scene that makes it have a Wikipedia wiki? And so I put in a lot of time alongside a bunch of people. Like, the Wikipedia contributor team is nuts. It's at the moment like 5 to 10 people, depending on the day. They just put in almost full-time hours into keeping the wiki updated, into looking for tournaments, into helping new people get onboarded. And that has been going on for 2 years now. There's been a little bit of cycling of people. Like, some people have left in the sense that they don't contribute as much or they just haven't really talked in the chat for a long time. But the core of contributors still there, and it's really cool to see. And so what ended up happening was that I really liked Age of Empires 2. I did basically the same things that I did with Overwatch. I did them with Age of Empires 2. I did player interviews. I did, basic ideas about the game, and I did a couple of Red Bull Wololo interviews. So when Red Bull Wololo announced that they were going to be doing tournaments, I said, "Oh, that's pretty interesting. That's Red Bull coming along and doing events." And so I did interviews, I did coverage, and over time, I sort of tried to establish that as the main thing that I would be doing in Age of Empires, like just news coverage, interviews, stuff like that. And then as Age of Empires 4 sort of started becoming more of a reality as it came along into the October deadline, I started thinking about, well, this is an exciting opportunity. It is a new RTS title that is coming out at a time where RTS titles are not, either you're taking something that is very indie, like Tooth and Tail, or some, Forts or other titles in the scene, or you're taking a lot of patience out of consumers waiting for full package titles. Something like a Company of Heroes 3, for example. It had a beta a couple of months before Age of Empires 4, but it was very clear that when Company of Heroes 3 releases, it is going to be like its own package. And it will get updates, it will do its whole thing, but it's certainly not the same idea of expandability that, for instance, I don't know if you guys have been looking at the Stormgate, but Stormgate has a full concept of like, we're going to do content in a continuous basis, game as a service, that whole thing. And Company of Heroes doesn't feel like that. Age of Empires 4, to me at the time, did feel quite a lot like that. It did feel like, well, you're going to have the possibility of expanding into more civilizations. You have a lot of opportunity to explore interesting campaigns, and by itself, a fresh new engine to work all of these things that has never been done in Age of Empires, and the idea that there's going to be content for people to create in custom maps and custom game modes, it really all solidified to me that Age of Empires 4 is going to be the best opportunity that a lot of people that like RTS are going to have until somebody else comes along and does it better. And ideally, Age of Empires 4 pushes a little bit forward and says, at the very least, you got to get these things right, you know?
Yeah.
And by the time October was coming, Genesis had been announced, and I sort of put on the boots and said, I'm going to put full effort into this. And I did like 15 interviews with players from different competitive scenes that were coming along. And the rest is just me doing a lot of work in Wikipedia to get Age of Empires 4 like situated in like having the map images, having the civ images, having the structure just ready so that when tournaments hit the scene, they could be in Wikipedia and there wouldn't be any delay in all of that to sort of leave space for what I think is the number one problem in any esports scene, that you don't have discoverability. If you're a tournament, and this relates to like the Warchief Club, for instance, unless I really try to advertise myself for the Warchief Club, it's very hard to get people to realize that the Warchief Club is happening or that it is a tournament that they can compete in. And I personally don't like to advertise a lot, principally because I am in a position where like that could be seen as a little bit shady. I'm a moderator for the subreddit. I run the ATR. I run the Age of Empires 4 competitive Discord. Like that's a whole bunch of compounding factors that made me go, well, I don't really want to advertise because it sounds a little bit shady. Um, but yeah, the main reason that I wanted to do the Warship Club in the first place was just the idea that at the moment, either you do a tournament with EGC in the sense of like either you're participating in a tournament that is EGC affiliated, or you do something like low elo legends or the Australian Championship, which is for Australians and Oceanian. And there is then now that Dominicados is no more, you don't have anything else. Like if you're a North American player right now, you have to play at EGC specified times, or against competition that is going to be trying to aim for like a spot in the Red Bull Wallow at the end of the year. And if you simply want to play fairly good players in an open bracket, you don't have any other choice. And like, I personally love the idea of elo limited tournaments in the sense that they provide like a base practice session for a lot of players and a first introduction to tournaments. But I very much like open tournaments because they provide the ability to say, if Marine Lord keeps all of his games hidden, at least by playing Marine Lore once, you can take the replay and you can go over it and over it and over it again and understand the build order. If you are having, a double elimination bracket and you're a player that regularly gets into the top 64 or top 32, I'd say, for example, a road to Wallow, and then you play in a weekly tournament that is open and you're facing opponents that are around your same level, you're getting experience that would often be like consider scrimmages in places like Overwatch or Valorant, where you're just playing to play the game, and then you use the replay to have a better understanding of what you did wrong, what your opponent did right, what is the strategy going on right now. And ladder is okay for some of this stuff, but there are times where you really need to just be able to hammer out games with players that are better than you and not have to worry about like, am I gonna lose my end of the season rewards for this, or am I gonna, if you want to play in low elo legends and you're worried that if you're gonna play more ladder matches, either you're gonna be bumped up or bumped down from the bracket that you were playing before, and maybe the people that you were playing regularly in low elo legends, now you're not gonna see them for the next week because you ended up getting bumped by the ladder. And
Right.
that's why I really like open tournaments and that sort of stuff. So that is why the Warchief Club exists. That is why I kind of want to get it out there. And it's also another of the main goals of the Warchief Club is to be a platform for people like casters, for people that want to do replay analysis, for people that just want to play an easy game and stream on the other end, that want to have practical experience when it comes to like how is the tournament run, like is the admin gonna tell me off because I missed this or I had this problem. And even earlier on, like we're at the number 14 at the moment, right? And even back when Genesis was happening, people had no idea how to do brackets in what was then known as Match.gg, now Start.gg, because that was never used for even a lot of RTS titles. So people were confused as to, okay, how do I check in for my match? How do I
Right.
check the rules? And I wanted to Worship Lab to be a place where they could go, okay, I know the admin is not going to tell me, hurry up and do it if I don't know where the rules are, or I experience with like the draft website, which was a
Right.
big factor for a lot of people. A lot of people had no idea how to run the draft website. So it's sort of that tool to get people more accustomed to the esports side of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you really hit the nail on the head with talking about, you get that chance to have high competitive level practice and play that might not actually be, these high money on the line, dollar situations. Yeah, you're still competing for some dollars, but competing at a tournament level, there's always a different pressure point. It's always different when you're playing against an opponent who is going to scout you out, ban out a civ, and actually try to focus on the matchup as well. It's definitely on a different level, so it adds a extra incentive to compete on these during the week.
Yeah, the way that I generally see it, and this comes from my time in competitive Overwatch, right? Where even at the amateur level, you had this mentality of like improvement, improvement, improvement. And the main way that I see it is if you're in a ladder match, you are worrying about your potential not hitting 50%. You're worried that you're going to execute things at below 50% your capacity. When you're in a tournament match, you're worried that you're not going to be able to hit your 100% capacity. So you're constantly thinking about like every mistake is going to send me back. In a ladder match, if you're missing, oh, you missed a sheep, oh, man, that is going to happen like 50-50 in my games. I just got to pull back from this. If that happens in a tournament match, even if it is the early rounds, because of things like best of ones and best of threes, you're going to be thinking, ah, damn it, I'm going to miss a sheep here. This is going to send me back terribly. I really need to catch up. And that level of stress is the sort of thing that you get acclimated to. I don't because I suck at competitive titles, but most people end up getting acclimated to. Most people end up having, dealing with it and understanding that, okay, what are my other options and growing from there, right? And so for me, having a tournament open gives you that opportunity more often than not.
Yeah, cool. So definitely fills a niche in the community that's needed, right? So, we had Shubaka on last week, who of course does the low elo Legends tournaments, and just definitely a fun environment for the bulk of the community to get some competitive type games in. But you provide a platform, for maybe some players that are higher up, maybe you're Diamond 1, 2, or 3, and you kind of want to break into that competitive scene. And, yeah, Red Bull Wololo's open, but you might run into Marine Lord or Wham in the first round, and it's a best of one single elimination. That kind of sucks. Uh, but you provide a place where every week you can come in and you know iron sharpens iron, right? To get some practice against people who also want to play competitively. So yeah, just go ahead and plug it. So what's the format? What time do you usually run it? How many people do you usually have sign up? And any other information that people would be interested in.
Yeah, what I will always say is, if you're somebody in like gold or even lower than that,
Hmm.
it's good to realize that it doesn't matter if you end up getting stomped in the first round, particularly in the Warchief Club, because it is double elimination. So
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have another chance to like fight a sort of closer opponent in your second match. But the thing about getting stumped is that you can always say, I just simply got a bad seed and go from there. And just look back at the replay and have a better understanding of whether or not you did the things that you wanted to do right. And if you're looking for just a fun tournament to do during the week, it's a great vehicle to just have two matches and knock it out and keep playing ladder if you want to. And you just get your ladder anxiety off in a tournament instead of playing your first two matches and being cold and not realizing that like you're still cold and you're gonna lose anyway, right? Might as well lose in a tournament where you don't have elo in the line. Um, so the format in general is all the lower bracket is best of one, upper bracket is best of one until the winter finals. And the main reason for this is time. It
Mm-hmm.
is just too difficult to fit something like best of three, all upper bracket. There is no way in a weekday event. And the way that it works is right now I've changed the format to three weekly events. So on Wednesday, you have the Oceania Warchief Club, which is at 6 in the morning for Eastern time, but it's actually like 7 p.m. in Australia. I
Makes
had to wake up
sense.
at 4:30 today, so that was it's been a long day. Also on Wednesday you have the European Warchief Club, which is at a more reasonable 6 p.m. for the GMT, which for anybody who is in Eastern United States, that's about 2 p.m. So 1 p.m. for you guys. And finally on Thursday, which I believe you, Dabson, you're gonna be on it,
I will be.
is the Americas Worship Club, which starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. So those are the three weekly events. And there is also a Friday special event, and that is going to be on rotation with like different things. So this week it's a 2v2, though there aren't a lot of signups right now. And next week it's probably going to be a mirror matchup, not mirror matchup, a single monosieve bracket. So when you sign up, you pick a sieve and you play with that sieve throughout the entire thing.
Oh
So
wow.
the,
That's
the, the
cool.
Friday one, which is going to be at the Americas time as well, that one is just going to be for fun. It
Mm-hmm.
is simply explore different formats, try out different things, and have fun with it. Right? It might be a free for all one week. It might be a mirror matchup another, just the whole shebang, right? Um, so in terms of prices, it is being like it's community contributed. I'm gonna be putting between $50 and $60 every month. So if you play in each of the weekly events, if you get top four, you're guaranteed a prize pool at the end of the month. So everything that is raised throughout the month goes to all the weeklies that happen in that month. So for instance, in June, We have 90 for June, and there are going to be 3 weeklies on June. So every single winner for the weeklies is going to get like $4. And obviously, people are welcome to contribute in Matcherino. They can either do so through like a direct contribution of cash, or there are also things like sponsor quests that are literally just follow a certain account because that company wanted to get more followers, and you just follow, and it adds like 10 cents or 20 cents. Maybe another one is visit a website, and you just visit the website and it adds the cash, or like certain videos, stuff like that, which are super simple and really non-committal. And I always try to pick, because you have like a list of pick from there. I always try to pick the reasonable ones that are, they make sense. They are things that most people wouldn't have a problem with, like going into and doing. So yeah, it's community contributions. I don't get anything from it. Everything that goes into that contribution goes to the players. I don't ask for a single dollar ever, and that is probably going to be the case forever.
Very
Awesome.
cool.
I'm sure the community and everyone appreciates that. I know I heard you mention the 2v tournament this weekend. It's funny. I hear a lot of people always bring up wanting to see a 2v2 tournament, play a 2v2 tournament, and I feel like every time it gets brought up, it kind of has that same outcome, which is what you said. It hadn't had a lot of signups yet, so that's definitely one we got to get out and about because, like I said, I mean, people definitely want to see the content or play in the content. It's just they might not know about it here yet.
Yeah, I will give a shout out to Barrett RTS. He did the Strongest Cup a couple of weeks ago, which was a 2v2 cup with 16 teams. So that was full pack from
Ooh.
what he wanted. It was really cool. And he's doing it again, I think, on the 24th. So if anybody's listening, go search up the Strongest Cup. I think it's gonna be in Wikipedia eventually when when somebody gets the time to like go and create the page. Um, but it's also gonna be through Star.gg. So probably if you go to Star.gg, you can find the Strongest Cup too, and you're gonna be able to sign up with a friend there and compete in another 2v2 tournament that has prizes, because the Friday ones don't have prizes for the Warchief Club. So if you actually want to compete for a little bit of cash, maybe you buy dinner for your teammate. Um, you can do so with the Strongest Cup.
There you go.
Very cool. So, who are some players that have kind of played in your tournaments that maybe aren't super well known, but you think could kind of burst onto the scene in the future?
I think if you had asked me this a couple of months ago, well, technically they were kind of known at the time, but like Puppy Pound 1 played 2 or 3 Warchief clubs when they were still not hitting top 16s in tournaments regularly, or like top 32s in tournaments regularly.
Mm.
So that's a big proud moment for me of like, hey, these are players that went through the quote unquote system, right? They played in a small tournament and then refined their skills further and played in a big tournament, and they got really far in it. Right now, I think IS Anij. I actually don't know how to pronounce his name, but he also goes by Andrew in Discord. Um, he's been playing for a long time in Warchief clubs, and I used to see him like get knocked out in the second round of losers or third round of losers whenever the bracket got that big. But lately, like he's gotten third in the Oceania and in the Europe one today. So he's up against Sayark and Nyan, who are the top 2 players in the bracket right now. And below him was Veggie, and in the Oceania one was Bak Mogun, which I will say, Bak Mogun, Korean player, he's been playing in the Warship Club ever since like almost the start. I think after TWC3, he's been playing in almost every one, and he's also been like pretty consistently getting top of TWC. He hasn't had much success past that, like in other tournaments, but I always see him playing, and like that's the thing. If I see you play in a bracket, and because I update Wikipedia, I always know if you played in the bracket or not. If I see you play in a bracket, you immediately get a little bit more respect from me, because it means that you're getting out there and you're playing in a tournament and you're trying your best. Even if you go down in like the first round, that's fine. That's the process. just
Yeah.
keep getting into the tournament and doing it. So going back to your question, um, another player that I've been seeing kind of frequently in the bracket and that has been part of the bracket for a long time has been Divine. And
Mm-hmm.
Divine, pretty much any time that he goes into the Warchief Club, he wins it. And even back when it was TWC 6, I think, or something like that, he played, he won, and he beat guys like Soldier, like Give You Anxiety at the time that they were considered really good players, like in the top 16 and stuff like that. Um, and Nyan and a lot of those like big hitters at the time. And now he is the one considered like one of the best North American United States players, alongside your Canadian brothers that seem unbeatable sometimes, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know a couple of the other names you mentioned. I actually kind of been following up as well, which is Psyark and Nyan and Veggie as well. But I covered, I think, both Psyark and Nyan this past weekend in Wololo, and they took some good games and had some good games as well. And I think they could both kind of potentially be, even having further breakthroughs in some of the further brackets.
Yeah, for sure. I think Sayark in particular, like Sayark signed up for all three Warchief Clubs this week, so he's playing in the North American tomorrow. Um, I I think Soldier is playing as well, so I'm looking forward to like a potential matchup of Soldier versus Sayark in that bracket. Um, but I think Sayark, if he's putting in a lot of work in that way, because obviously the monetary reward right now for Warchief Club is not that big. You're not winning $50 for like winning the tournament, but Sayark is playing all three tournaments. So clearly, what he's looking for is competition,
Hmm.
and being able to give him that competition, and then perhaps he goes into Road to Wallow on Saturday and he has a breakthrough performance. That would be a big moment for me personally to feel like, yo, dude, I warmed you up with those three tournaments. Let's go.
Right.
So that's kind of the path to pro that I'm trying to build up.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, so yeah, in the YouTube description, I'll leave a link to the some of the start.gg links for the Warchief Club. So anybody that's interested can get involved. Is there a Discord dedicated for that, or do you just use
Yes,
the one that you run?
there is a Discord, and you can find it in start.gg or in the Wikipedia page for the Warchief Club. In all of the Warchief Club, it's the same server, so you can hop in and look around. And if you're a caster in particular, if you want to cast any of the matches, I don't care if like you're gonna cast one match because it's your friend playing. Go ahead and do it. You can get the caster role, and you can like promote your stream whenever you're live for the event, and that way more people see it. And I particularly want to be able to tell people, if they want to see the Warchief Club, somebody can come up to me and say, hey, I'm going to stream it and I'm going to push it forward. And I'm going to tell them, hey, this is somebody who's streaming it. Go watch them. Because at the moment, I don't have the capability to stream it. And I also don't think I would be a very good caster.
All right, very cool. So yeah, I'll put that Discord in the description also. So
Yeah. So I know you mentioned, obviously not being the gamer. That's why you've kind of stepped into a different role. Do you still find yourself playing AOE4 every now and then, or are you mainly just kind of the behind the scenes as well now?
Sometimes like it's a double-edged issue, like from two different sides, because on one hand I do get like that freeze when I play competitive games, and I know it doesn't feel good, and I'm also not giving my opponent a good matchup. So that's the other thing, that like I know I don't play well, and I don't want to make you play me so that you see how bad I play. But on the other hand, I'm also super busy all the time. I'm a full-time writer for an esport publication called Bash Fight, who turned 2 years today, and I've been with them since October 2021 or 2020.
Awesome.
I think 2021. So like over a year, and that's sort of the thing of not having enough time to do all the things that I want to do. But yeah, it's been mostly just watching and looking sometimes at Age of Empires whenever I get the chance. Like Road to Wallow has been really good in that sense of just tuning in to watch a little bit of Age of Empires 4 while I update the Wikipedia for all of the pools in the in the in the tournament.
so
Makes sense.
is anybody helping you do all that, or is that all you?
Yeah, no, like usually I am the one who takes the big assignments for Age of Empires 4 because I'm the dude that likes it the most. But huge, massive, just unbelievable shout out, the biggest one that you can fit in a box, to a guy named Longinator. I believe he's from Germany. This dude has been carrying the Wikipedia for Age of Empires for just, I think, months at this point. He wakes up and edits a bunch of tournaments, especially for Age of Empires 2, and it is just insanity to see him go to work and update the brackets, update the content, and just make sure that everything is running smoothly. And like, I'm an administrator for Wikipedia, he's an editor, but Jesus Christ, the amount of work that he puts into Wikipedia is just unbelievable. So, if there is somebody that you want to thank for Wikipedia being as relevant as it is in the Age of Empires scene, it should probably be him at this point with how much he's done. And in general, going a little bit into Wikipedia for a second, just on the off chance, if there are any Vietnamese players hearing the podcast, I really want to start getting the Age of Empires 1 scene into the Wikipedia. And the Red Bull Willow has been an interesting opportunity because they are having an Age of Empires 1 tournament in there, and I just want to get more people into doing that. And I know it's difficult primarily because of the language barrier, because Wikipedia is all in English. Um, but I just want to try to get more eyes into it. Same with, I know there are a lot of people who play and watch Age of Empires Online, which is Project Celeste, but we call it Age of Empires Online in general. Also them, like, if you know of a tournament in Age of Empires Online, go ahead and throw it into the Age of Empires Wikipedia chat, because we will happily make a tournament for it. We will happily teach people how to make tournaments for it in the site. And just, the Age of Empires Wikipedia is for all Age of Empires game. It really doesn't matter from which one. And it might be dominated by 2 and 4 because those are the sort of popular kids in the block, but it literally any, and will help you.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, definitely big shout out to anybody who works puts in information in the Wikipedia, because talk about a thankless job. but I'm on there, every day almost, just poking around looking at stuff. So I'm definitely appreciative of all that. So
Yeah, I mean, all of the information that is on Wikipedia also ends up in AOE4 World. So, like, all of
mm-hmm.
the statistics that you see from the tournaments, that is coming straight through Wikipedia as well. So, yeah, I will again shout out to the AOE4 World people. They've been super active and like talking with us in the Wikipedia side to make sure that they're doing things right, to make sure that all of the information is coming through clean and correctly, and all of that sort of stuff. So it's been really fun to see that community project grow up. I know they have a Patreon or something along those lines. So again, shout out if anybody wants to contribute to the general community. I know the AOE4 Worlds would appreciate having more contributors to their side as well.
Absolutely. All right, so we got a couple news items this week. So the first off is got an update to Ranked Season 1. So, as many people were suspecting, it did turn out that, on average, players were losing more points for a loss than they were gaining for a win. And so you can kind of see in this table here. So their intended system that they wanted to have happen is that you would gain roughly 27.5 points for a win, but in actuality, you were only gaining 17.5. Whereas for a loss, you were losing 20 when they wanted you to lose 25. So that's kind of why we saw that shift where the bulk of the player base was slowly being pulled towards bronze. So they went and they retroactively changed this, but I have questions about the new system as well, because if you're gaining more points than you're losing, even if you're winning 50% of your games, well, then your rating is steadily going to climb. And I understand why they're doing that. It's because they want to incentivize people to play more, and seeing that progression of your rank slowly and steadily climbing feels good, and so that's going to encourage people to play even more. But I think they should. I think it should be a net. I think they should be even, right? That's my opinion, but I get why they did it this way. But anyway, they went and retroactively changed it, so I went from plat 1 to diamond 1. So me being in diamond just feels ridiculous, but here I am.
I will say, as someone who just recently introduced an elo calculation for the ATR, uh, doing elo is really freaking hard.
Uh,
Turns out there is a lot of things that you have to take into account. So it's kind of unfortunate that it happened at the tail end of the season when like a lot of people were sort of familiar with the ranking that they were in. But I suppose this is one of those changes where it ends up affecting everybody more or less equally. So I don't foresee a situation where if somebody was playing in diamond, they're not suddenly going to start facing marine lore more often because they got jumped up to another rank. So it's going to change the numbers and I guess the rank distribution a little bit, but they
Yeah.
they yeah, they said that they were going to be updating throughout the next few days. So I guess by the time the weekend comes about, we're going to see the new distribution and have a better understanding of like the full measured effect.
I can't wait to see the new bell curve. It's gonna look so wonky.
Yeah, from what I've seen on all these Discord messages, everyone's shocked with how high they're rated now, and everyone is just kind of appalled with it, and they don't know how to react now. I've seen some people say I'm playing one ranked game and never playing again because I'm diamond. I've seen some people say, "Oh my gosh, I can get to Conquer easy now." It's kind of all over the board with people's reactions, but I kind of look at it at the same point that you looked at it. It's everyone's kind of affected in the same sense. If they were gold one and all the gold ones got moved up to plat three, then okay, great. Then they're still all going to be kind of matching it up against the same people, the same elo rating. There will be some sort of overlap in a sense, but it still will be the same time. You already heard complaints that silvers got matched up against platinum. It's now just going to look a little bit more even.
Yeah. The one thing that I don't like is that it's gonna be difficult to tell if you're actually improving because so I grinded from silver to plat, right? And so that was even with the point deflation. So in order to make that climb, like I know that I was getting better at the game and that feels good. But with this change, it's going to be like, okay, my rank's going up, but does that actually mean anything? Like, am I improving or is it just going up because of the point inflation? But
Yeah, it's
just a
kind of
little
disappointing
nitpicky.
for me.
But
It's disappointing for me. I just hit diamond, and so I was like, I hit diamond. It was such like a big like roadblock. I was like, oh, that's definitely like the next stop. And I was like, all right, it's gonna, from there it was really hard because you saw, a lot of these really really good pro players or what I call pro players. They might not call themselves pro, but I think they are. Trying to get to conquer, and they were, right on the edge or bouncing kind of back and forth. And I was like, well, if I'm diamond, I'm pretty close to some of those players and not too far away, so I felt really good. And now it's like, did I really earn it if I'm gonna get Conqueror? Did I really earn this now? Um, but I know that I earned that diamond rank because just how you mentioned, that was during the time of the Elo bug.
yeah, so I think they'll continue to tweak this. For sure, they're gonna have to. I think they're gonna widen the brackets because right now, like from silver to plat, it's really tight. And if everyone's just gaining points, you're just gonna blast through there super fast. There's gonna be like nobody in silver and gold. You're either gonna be bronze or plat and above. I feel like we'll see what happens when the new distribution comes out. But
Yeah, it's one of those that only time will really tell, but I think that they at least know they heard the feedback from all the players, from all the annoyance of the people that were stuck in bronze and not climbing, and they made their update. And I'm sure if it isn't correct, then we will be quick to update them again, and they will be a little slower to fix it, but they'll still get there eventually, I'm sure. But it still all will end up getting there in the long run. They've definitely been a lot quicker with, you saw the server side patch stuff, everything with all the reactions, even from the PUP update here now recently, everyone immediately reacted and said, "Oh my gosh, Abbasid got no love. China got, nerfed even harder." Well, what's this gonna, come on, you got to give us some love to China. China's already at the bottom. Well, they immediately went ahead, and we'll get to this here in just a moment, where they gave them a little love here that I think will have a big effect in their struggle part of the game.
That's right. So as you said, we got some pup changes. And we talked last week with the new veto system that we have that the ranked pool needs more maps because I think there were 7 maps, and if each player gets 3 vetoes, then there's only 1 map left, which is kind of silly. But so we got more maps now. So King of the Hill is new, Ancient Spires is new, and the Pit is new. And then Mongolian Heights, they've made some changes. So instead of 3 narrow crossings, there are 5 wider crossings, so that should open up the map a little bit. Hopefully make it not as annoying to play. You're not going to be able to completely stop early harass by walling all 3 crossings. So hopefully not every Mongolian Heights game goes an hour and 10 minutes now.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, I feel like, what the reaction will be from the pro scene on maps like Ancient Spires, per se, that immediately, got so much hatred that's like, if you hear people beastie for saying, oh, that map's absolutely trash, I'm never going to play that. Well, now it's updated. Or did they make the right updates? Is it actually going to be viable, balanced? Because there was times I played it the other day on Quick Match, and there was a giant pond next to me, and it had 1 shoreline fish, and it was a absolutely massive pond. And then there was a smaller one right behind it that had like 7 shoreline fish, and it just seemed really odd with the map generation. There's random cliffs. There's random times where you'd have 3/4 of the map walled off with an island and look more like archipelago. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't think that they put it in the ranked pool if they didn't feel pretty confident about it already.
Yeah, it should be better. So I think you can now see your closest pond from your starting TC, like when the game loads in every time. Because that was annoying too, because you were like, okay, I need to build a dock, right? Oh, I can't find my pond. I'm ready to build the dock, but I don't know where to put it. So now my build is completely screwed. So that shouldn't happen anymore. And now I think all the ponds have the same amount of fish, if I remember correctly. So good changes. So it should actually be a good map now. So interesting to try that one out. They also fixed the quick match pool and mega randoms in there. So I know a lot of people were asking for that. So got some mega random and quick match. And then a couple smaller civ changes. So remember, this is just in the pup. So Abbasid, Golden Age Tier 1 bonus now 15% instead of 10%. So, just throwing them a bone to kind of get their early game going a little bit better.
I think this has a much bigger effect than what people realize. You can end up getting that golden age basically when you're already mining your stone for your second town center, or you basically get it when you drop your second town center, which is right when you're starting to ramp up anyways. And getting that extra 5% additional is really, really huge, just in terms of overall eco behind the scenes. That's on everything, not just food.
Yep. And then similar sort of thing for China. Trying to give them, get their early game going because it is, fairly weak. So Imperial Academy can now train Imperial officials. Of course, this means that now you don't need to use your town center time on training them. So you'll get a few extra villagers in effect there.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I think this will have a big effect. Obviously, the build right now is 6 to the mill. You immediately go with your Imperial official. You kind of balance a few 1 gold sometime, like 2 1 gold, and then you have a couple drop offs. I'm wondering if people might try to go back to the no IO build and then only build IOs out of the Imperial Academy, or if we'll still see that first one come out and then see all the additional ones come out. But if you really think about it, the Imperial Academy, a lot of times if you drop the Barbican first, that's when you have Song Dynasty, and then training those Imperial officials have an even bigger impact when you have Song Dynasty already. So it has a really big effect, especially when Chinese is hurting in the early game. You're helping them in the early game, which is their biggest deficit. So it kind of speeds them along in their hurtful point.
Yep. And then last but not least, we finally get a French nerf. Chivalry cost has increased quite substantially, actually. So from 50 wood and 125 gold to 100 wood and 200 gold. So, uh, you know, a big difference.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much of an effect this will actually have. Obviously, Chivalry is a huge upgrade that everyone on the French utilizes, but a lot of times it's weird. I actually see people miss kind of they don't time the upgrade correctly. I see some people get it when they just lost 3 knights and they only have one fully healthy knight, and I'm like, you should have just been training more knights. I see some people get it when they have 4 completely healthy knights, and I'm like, you should just continue to build knights. The key is if you can actually replenish your knights and it makes up sense for the resources you're utilizing. If you think about it, 240 resources a night, you're spending more than what a knight is, so you should get more than a knight in return for what you're spending. So that's kind of the way I look at it, and it's now one that I think people will delay a little bit longer. It is quite a bit of resources when you think about it as a whole, and we might even just have to see some French buffs in reaction because it might just be too hard of a nerf.
Nah, they've been good for too long. They can spend some time at the lower tier, for as far as I'm concerned. So
But no, I don't think it'll be that bad for them in reality. They still get to pressure early. They still get to aggro. They still get the knights out. You might just not have that healing out as early as you would like.
yep. So Outback Octagon has been rolling on. I did not get a chance to watch today, unfortunately. But so week one, there were some alliances, sort of, a little informal. Week two, they got a little bit more sophisticated. There was some quote unquote drama regarding the super team that BC built and ended up winning the game with. But did you get a chance to watch today's?
I watched a little bit of it. I mean, there's definitely pretty formal teaming. I think there's a fine line between teaming and non-aggression packs, because you see a lot of the non-aggression packs, but then there is some clear times when it's actually teaming up. So that's really the cool thing. Today they actually had Core showed the chat on the stream for Drongo, so I think that added a extra effect that everyone wanted to
Oh,
see,
I'm
seeing
excited
it in
now.
chat. Yeah, see people's reactions. The biggest thing that I love to see is kind of the little small sneaky plays early in the games. Like, obviously the big meme is Wham is trading, but people actually do talk a lot more in the game where they'll say, oh, the Muslims already fighting B, or this person's fighting this, or I saw Matches today was like, what's going on, guys? Is anything going on? And he's sitting there with like 240,000 resources in the bank that he's just like, okay, he's clearly going to end up dropping a wonder at some point. But it's just cool kind of seeing that behind the scenes effect that you can have, that diplomacy, or actually the sneaky diplomacy where you're actually planning to backstab, or kind of make people think something you're doing something else than you are.
Yep. Adico, have you been watching the Outback Octagon?
Not really. Like, free for all is not my favorite format, and I know it can be really fun, but it's just the sort of thing that I don't know. I just end up like tuning out a little bit. And today in particular, because I had the Warchief Club Europe, so
Yeah.
I was just adminning that one, so I couldn't catch up on the other one. But I think in general, it can be like a super fun format. And I've been seeing some of the drama behind the scenes of like, hey, teaming shouldn't be allowed. What is happening here? How do we actually solve this? And it is certainly a complex issue. And I do wonder if like it is co-sponsored by Microsoft. I wonder if Microsoft is gonna take notes and is gonna say, okay, maybe we can develop a feature to like help on this sort of stuff. Maybe not for the Outback Octagon, but if in the future there is another free for all tournament, maybe we end up getting something on season 2 or late season 2, season 3 that says, hey, now for like free for alls, you have different settings as a lobby to determine things like teaming or stuff like that that you can discourage people on.
Yeah.
I know there was a lot of talk of like full diplomacy and how in the advanced settings mod there are some things about it that sort of like exist in game but are not unlocked naturally. So maybe something like that will come down the line to help these issues. But it's unfortunate that some players do feel really strongly about it, and I think some of them have been pretty vocal about it. But it was ends up happening, and if people are going to have a chance to get a better advantage in a game, they're going to take it 100% of the time.
For sure. Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. It's a really hard thing to monitor, just like you talk about. I mean, there's always going to be that spot where it makes more sense to team up, or you're about to get knocked out, and your way back in it is having someone help you, and then all of a sudden, you're going to want to repay them, or you might want to team up, and then all of a sudden you went from going to seventh place, and now you're at fourth, and all you did was, kind of have a little bit of diplomacy, which it's part of the game, but it's how we saw the super team. There gets to be a fine line where it seems like, okay, this is a little too unfair now. Like, this isn't even going to be as much of a tournament now with it, if it gets to that level, which today it wasn't like that. It's still, constant fighting, some fun stuff, some back and forth. I always love seeing the landmark hidden behind someone's base and waiting to see someone fight it, and then it's all of a sudden three players rushing to try to get the points for the kill. And that's one thing that I think, just how you mentioned, Microsoft maybe could develop the actual kill tracker that makes sense, that actually could see, hey, okay, you know the Muslim got the final kill on B, or State got the final kill, or whatever it may be, to kind of help the behind the scenes, not have an observer have to rewatch all the games and make sure, hey, okay, that horseman got the last hit, not the bomber.
Yeah, for sure. That anyway, I think it's been such a fun tournament. I was kind of not too sure about how my personal interest would be in it, because yeah, I like when a normal stream of a free for all, I don't find super interesting. But I don't know, for some reason I've really been sucked into this, so I've had a lot of
The
fun
thing that
watching
I
it.
think would like super elevate it, and this is something that happens a lot in, for instance, Overwatch. One of the ways that I consume Overwatch content is with like a co-op stream, which is basically just another group of people, not the casters, kind of talking about what's happening in the game, but also shooting the shit with each other and just talking, whatever else might be happening. I would really enjoy it if like you have one group playing and you have another group that is going to play later or that just played, sort of sitting around in the call and just talking shit about the players playing and just
I
saying, oh, he's doing everything wrong there, like he needs to do something else, and just kind of having a conversation about the nature of the game as well, because I think you can end up getting really interesting conversations when you're just watching something like secondarily to the conversation that you're having with the other player.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I think there was a time where I think it was Beastie, Marine Lord, and Core
Yep.
all jumped in a call, and it was just how you mentioned, like, they were casting the game a little bit, but they were also shooting the shit, talking crap to each other. You know how Beastie is with Core, and Marine Lord is with them as well, and so it was a really kind of fun experience. Some people might take it on the bad way, as they're talking so much shit to each other, but it's really one of those. It's lighthearted. You see these people, they're competitive, they're playing each other every day. You can tell that they're not actually meaning a lot of the stuff that they say, and it was, a really cool experience to actually see a different look, and not just, okay, this is a casting, this is exactly what the game goes on, because you do hear other insights where it's like, oh, he's floating wood, he should do this instead, he should drop these barracks, he should go for a landmark snipe, whatever it may be. It's, hearing the other insights from what the players are thinking from their perspective.
Yeah, they were. That was the Wham versus the Muslim makeup
Yeah.
game for Golden League. That was a fun stream.
Yeah, that's what it
the,
was.
the main thing, sort of bouncing off your point of like talking about strategy and floating resources and all of that, the main thing that it serves to do, and this is why it was so and like is so valuable in something like Overwatch, is because people have different philosophies about how you should go about doing things, right?
Mm.
So like if I am floating 500 res and I'm thinking of aging up at one point, maybe if I'm not playing at that moment, I still think about it because I'm watching a player POV or a caster POV and I see those resources floating around and I mention it off the cuff when there are other players around me. And maybe another player is thinking, oh, he's probably floating those resources to do something else entirely. And that's the first thing that goes through their mind. And now suddenly you have this clash of philosophies and ideas about how you should manage your resources or, whatever else, or territory control. Like, should you be taking all of the sacred sites early on, or should you just be responding to certain sacred sites? What happens in a matchup between Abbasid and Delhi with those things, right? And having the players get involved in a casual setting where they're not expected to teach the viewer something, but instead talk between each other about these high level concepts is something that I really like. Because as a viewer, like I don't have a perfect understanding of the game, but I have a good enough understanding of the game to when I hear two experts talk about it, I get a little bit of that into it. Because they can have different frameworks on which they work their ideas, and just hearing what those frameworks are can change mine. And getting a guide or a build order is okay, but you're just viewing one framework on that. If you have a couple of players exchange those ideas, it suddenly becomes a little bit more fluid, and I think more dynamic. So I'm hoping that at some point we get more of those situations of like co-casting between players, where it's not necessarily the official stream, because having casters like hearing Killer Pigeon and Lidacor go through a game, it's fun for me. Like I enjoy it, but I also want to hear like if Divine gets on the mic with Blade. I want to hear that. I want to hear a game where they're
That
just
would be
talking about
hilarious. Oh
shit.
my gosh. I think a
Just
lot of
throwing
people would pay
core
money to
there,
see that.
like Salami, core, Divine, and Blade, and you have the four guys just talk about something in Road to Wololo after they've been kicked out, and just talking shit about the people that knock them out. Like they see at the Muslim and Marine Lord matchup, and they're like, "Yeah, the Muslim kicked me out of the tournament today, but I'm still gonna talk shit about him because
Yeah.
I'm on the mic and he's not." So I really want that interaction between the pro players to flourish a little bit more, because we see that in their streams, but we don't necessarily see the sort of cross pollination between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of Wololo, so we got we had the second weekly this past weekend, and we ended up with a pretty interesting top 8. So if I can get it pulled up here, there
I
we
think
are.
you would have bet that one of the big names was missing at the beginning of the week. I think 99.9% of people would have said that Beastie would be in the final 8, no doubt, no question in my mind, and obviously that is one of the big names that we do see missing.
Right. So I couldn't watch all of day one, and I couldn't go back and catch all the way up. So I actually missed the VC versus Caspa series. So what sort of sneaky tricks did Caspa whip out to knock
Yeah,
VC off?
so first, Frisian Marshes, I was talking with Puppy Paul about this, and he mentioned that obviously Roos is one of the stronger civs, but really the big thing about that map is it's a very, very towerable map where it's very hard to punish. You're kind of cornered in, and if a couple towers can go up in the correct positions, it can actually deny so much more compared to some other maps. And so as typical Caspa always does, he did a little bit of a funky tower rush. I think he was Roos, and I think he brought up like 5 or 6 villagers and built a wooden fortress in between 2 gold mines and denied Beastie off gold for quite a while. I think he built up another tower and just didn't allow Beastie to ever kind of break out of that chokehold like you see that you're able to do on some other maps.
Mm.
Yeah, I was just looking at the Start.gg bracket the entire time, and I was very surprised when I saw Caspa take that game of Beastie, to the point that I thought it was actually like a record mistake, because those happen a lot. It's super fun when players decide to just pick whatever map they want instead of the map they actually played, and then I have to go back and check that. Um, but it was very surprising, and I think if we're talking breakthrough performances, the Mista.
Yeah.
Holy cow,
Yeah.
dude. You were out for so long and you come back. And here's the story. A couple of days before this second June Road to Wallow tournament, he talked to me, because obviously there were a couple of changes to the ATR. For anybody who's not familiar, the ATR is a point system that gives out points for finishing positions in any tournament in Age of Empires 4, any tournament in Wikipedia in Age of Empires 4. And it's usually used for things like seeding or invitees, stuff like that. So, for instance, some of the monthly people that are going to be on the June Road to Wololo are going to come from the ATR if they don't make it through points in Road to Wololo and Ranked Ladder, right? So one of the things that he asked me about is with the new rate that the points are decaying in the ATR, how many points would he have by the end of August? Because that's usually when the season for him ends and he can go back and compete. Um, and I tell him it's going to be very low. You're going to be in top 50, going from like top 10 that he is right now. And I don't know if that's what sprung him to compete in the tournament this weekend, but whatever it was, it clearly motivated him enough to say, I need to get far in this tournament. And like, even without the points, he still walked away with money. He still walked away with a bunch of points for the other weeklies, to the point that I think, if you go up into the prize pool section and you click the RBWL hyperlink, the RBWL points hyperlink at the bottom,
Oh,
like in the prize pool section.
oh.
A little bit up. It's
Yep.
sort of in the middle of the page where it shows all the players.
There we are. Yep.
Yeah, the RBWL points on like
Right next to
yeah,
US
place
dollar.
USD.
Oh, there it is. There we go.
Yeah,
I was
you're
looking at
gonna
this
see
the other
there
day.
the table for the monthly
Mm-hmm.
and who is in, and you can see Mista. I talked with Lord Petito, and he tells me that they still need to find like a tiebreaker in case the Mista and Sir don't end up with the same points at the end of this and the same finishing positions. But if the Mista doesn't drop out of that top 11 players and he gets a really good finishing position uh, on this upcoming Road to Wallow, he's gonna go into the monthly. And like again, this is a guy that for months hasn't been playing Age of Empires 4 a lot,
Yeah.
and I think that's a pretty interesting success story to see now that he's gonna be coming in and competing in there.
Now,
Yeah, I know in one of the interviews he mentioned that the main reason he hasn't been able to play any or stream as much is that obviously he's a farmer and that's directly affected by the weather. And he said I think it hadn't rained in about 2.5 months. And then right before it was actually, I remember it because I screenshotted it and posted it in my Discord because I was hyped when I saw that he mentioned he would play. But it was on Tuesday in Killer Pigeon stream. He said he actually finally got some rain. He's going to sign up for this weekend. And so that was, I think, what gave him that big spur on was the ability to take a day or two off of work and actually get that ease in his mind that he's not having to fully focus on work. He can go ahead and get those dubs. He actually, I know it was able to stream a few times that week as well for a little bit. So love seeing him out there. He definitely pulled out some good games, some good series in the pool bracket before he even made the final eight.
yeah, for sure. So he should make the June monthly on ATR regardless, right? Because the points shouldn't decay that fast because he's still top 10.
He should, if because there are actually like there might be a chance that he doesn't if players above like if the Miracle Hera wants to come back and get through in ATR, I think he would get above Mista in that sense.
Uh-huh.
And it's only 2 spots for ATR, I believe.
Yeah.
I thought it was
So
2 from ladder and then 6 from ATR.
it might be like that, but he should have like a guaranteed spot. I don't know about seating because
Right.
it
Yeah,
might
yeah.
actually be better for seating if he goes through the Road to Wallow
Mm-hmm.
stuff to get seated into that top 8 for that one. But yeah, I mean, he has a really good chance. I think, other people that have really good chances, we mentioned him earlier, Psyark, even though he's not in this table, he
He's on
could get
14.
into
Yeah,
through the ATR.
He's got 7 points. He's down there. So
Yeah, he needs to have a really good performance to get through the other people because I mean, when you look at who is getting the most points, because you have 3 players that are really good players that are getting the bulk of the points, you're gonna have like the 10 to 2 points range is what most people are gonna be able to grab. You know,
Yeah.
the mid-sized players. So I think getting really good points here. I don't know if he would be able to get through with just that, but he also has the ATR on the other side, and I think that might be the reason that he's playing on the Warchief Club to just get a couple more ATR points before the cutoff on June, and grab that. So that's good strategic play if that's what he's doing, just banking on that.
Another couple names from the previous AOE titles are Capoche and Neutral Bear. Obviously, I think a lot of people know Capoche from AOE 2 and Neutral Bear from AOE 3, and both of those names we see over there making the top 10, and they each made top eights in their previous in Capoche in the first week and Neutral Bear this previous week, and he's also a name that I've seen kind of grinding a lot more and kind of climbing up in some of those tournament brackets where early on you might have seen him get knocked out earlier on. Now he's kind of getting into those further semifinals, finals of those pools.
You know, Kapoch has been having. The thing about Kapoch is that he played quite a bit at the release of the game, then sort of hold out a little bit, and I think that's mainly because I think he had another son or daughter born, so he was very busy with that, as you might imagine,
Mm.
and then went back, but mostly to play Age of Empires 2, which makes sense. He's really good at the game, and there were a couple of tournaments like King of the Desert 4 happening that made sense for him to compete in, I think. And now seeing him back, really good performance so far. I think he is getting a little bit more heat from players like Divine and Chrysor, and these other guys that have been going through the grind and playing and getting top 64s, top 32s, and now they're starting to get a little bit more hammered into it. And he's gonna need to clear that up. And Carlos Colbert is pretty good. I haven't seen too many games of his, and he mostly limits himself to like the EGC tournaments. I haven't seen
Yeah.
him play in other brackets. Not even the touring stuff and stuff like that. He pretty much sticks to EGC. So those are the only places where I've seen him finish.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to keep watching Divine because he's pretty much guaranteed to make it through ladder. I think because everybody ahead of him.
Oh, this month, yes. Actually, I think Wham is ahead of him now. So if Wham doesn't qualify through the weeklies, he would be it. But I think Divine would be the second one.
It depends on
Um,
what the hierarchy is. Like, do
they
they pick?
did just mention
Do they
that
pick
they
the
are not doing.
ATR? Do they pick the ATR people before ladder, or
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
Wham should get in through ATR?
Yeah, he's top 9 at the moment, so
Okay.
he
Yeah.
should be kind of good to go.
Okay.
So
And
Divine,
with the Mista.
I know they. I know
Funnily
they
enough,
constantly switch.
yeah.
the Mista and WAM are currently tied in ATR points. And the only thing that differentiates them is ELO, with WAM being 100 ELO higher in ATR.
Wow.
Just gotta rope Wham into doing one more Warchief Club.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah, he could. Like the only limit that I have for the Warchief Club is that qualified players for Red Bull Wallow proper
Mm.
can't. So somehow, like Marine Lord is in the server, but he can't play. So you're never gonna see Marine Lord in a Warchief Club until Red Bull Wallow.
That's funny. But anyway, Divine, nobody's gonna let him play French, right? So you'd think he would start, working on other civs, and I know he has, but I was watching Blade's stream last night, and there he was playing French. So,
He actually on his one of his Smurf accounts, he
mhm,
played like 50 HRE games in a row, I think, straight.
mhm.
And then I think he was practicing Roos as well that I saw, if I remember correctly. So he has started to play. I also have heard from some of the other pros that obviously Divine gets a ton of heat, but a couple of them have said they actually have started to respect his play a little more from the old days where it was just, okay, Mongol, here we go,
Well,
or French Hulks, or whatever it may be. They've respected it a little more, and he actually has, being at where he is in the ladder, you have to have some skills to get there. Obviously, he does typically pick the stronger strats and civs, but
yeah.
you
Well,
still seem to
his
be coming a long way.
his 2TC French that he's been riding, like, it's legitimately good. Like, he's not cheesing, so I don't know why. I think the hate has gone too far in Divine. I'm gonna stick up for him.
Here's the funny thing: just looking at his match history in the Age of Empires Wikipedia, he doesn't really play French. He rarely plays French.
I don't think anybody lets him. They just ban it.
The only
But
time
there,
that it was, I think it was Leenock, and everyone gave Leenock a bunch of crap for it, I think, if I remember correctly.
the thing is that like, if you're having to ban French of a player that is currently in 2022 going 117 wins to 77 losses, so a 60% win rate, and that is without his favorite civilization. Like, I think giving him shit, and like he lost with French on Frisian Marshes in his match against Symptom. I think Divine is just playing the biggest bait ever and playing French in the ladder to then go and have good performances on others.
Yeah.
Because what I'm seeing here is not a player that seems to be that reliant on French when he can win with other things.
Yeah. I think the reason people give him the heat is more the dodging every map he doesn't want to play,
Yeah,
only playing a single civ. He won't play any of the other than three maps, so that's why his ladder ranks inflated. So then he, in return, gets better seeding, better ATR points, blah 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 blah. That's just what I've read on all the snowballing annoyances of Discord posts. But I'm kind of on the same page for just how you mentioned. I mean, him being up to where he is, him getting the wins that he's getting, it shows that he, it doesn't matter if it's French or another Civ. He's a solid player. He's up and worthy of getting into the top, 16, top 20, top 32, whatever it may be.
yeah. I would figure if you're a top player, you could sort of imagine a situation in which, okay, I know my opponent is potentially going to be Divine. Instead of just banning outright that civilization and not knowing what he plays other than that, and like, not if you're not gonna, the concept of scrimmages, right? If you're not gonna scrimmage Divine and tell him, hey, I don't want you to play French in our scrimmages, and in exchange I'll play whatever you want me to play, just to get an idea of what he wants to play when he's not playing French. In that case, just if you know how he's gonna play French, try to develop a strategy that beats his French. You don't need to develop a strategy that beats every French player, just the one for him. And then you pigeonhole him into picking either French or some other civilizations where you have this sort of 50-50 shoot of like, am I going to win against his HRE? And you just practice HRE because you know that other players are going to go with HRE.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing where like scrimmages would help a lot with this, and understanding that, try to figure out what makes his French click and what you can do against it. And I think some players have, like Sardon, Capoch, they've taken games off him, not necessarily in French, but in mirror matches. So like Capoch, for instance, he won in Lipany and Danube River, playing a Mongol mirror in Lipany and then a HRE mirror on Danube River. So if it seems like the mirror matches, and here's another one that is it another one? No, but you can investigate the players, particularly with Age of Empires Wikipedia. Just go look up his matches and then watch the live stream of those matches and try to understand what he's doing that might be getting the better of other opponents.
I know Blade took a game off of him and lost 2-1, but the even bigger one, which I'll give a shout out to Adney, the creator of Frisian Marshes, he played Divine in round two, technically round
Yep.
one if you're not in the original one, and I pulled it up and he looked like he was quite ahead for some time. I believe he said he overmined Stone for way too long,
Yep.
and then in reaction did a keep drop that was a little too like a doubt keep, and just kind of threw on the game away after that. And so it just shows that there's other people out there too. I know actually we saw Adney in the free for all tournament. He was a stand-in today for GUA and had a little solid play there, and is another name out there that everyone likes to see because of the map making that he has done already.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that game. He built the second TC, but he never pulled his builds off a stone, so he just kind of had like 900 resources, not doing anything.
Yeah.
Um, but so speaking of maps, so we obviously had Frisian Marshes this previous week, so that's back in the pool. So it's not going to be a set like always the first map in a best of three like it was last week, but it is, I believe, an option that players can pick for their home maps. But now we're getting four lakes, and I believe it's the same as last week, where it's going to be the first map in the best of threes and fives, if I recall correctly.
Double check there for you. The map will be the first map for best of threes and best of fives.
Yeah, so
Yep.
I think that's cool what they're doing, sort of slowly rotating these new maps in, because it's been the same 6, 7 maps for several months now on the competitive scene. It's good to get some fresh maps in there.
Yeah, I like the idea too because even if, let's say Frisian Marshes might be skewed to one civ or another or one strategy, or you might be able to tower rush and punish that or you can't punish it tower rushing as well, whatever it may be. Well, all players have that same knowledge, that same advantage. You know, we might see on Frisian Marshes per se, some people take the shoreline fish way early, whereas other people don't and play the more safer route. It's all these different strats that now we get to see because it's a new map. Even because of Frisian Marshes, I've been hearing talk now on, hey, should we start trying to take shoreline fish on Mongolian Heights with mills? Is that going to be a better opportunity now? Because if it's a fast, so you kind of just with that map, you start hearing some new meta developments to see, hey, is that actually going to be worth it? Or maybe you don't have the wood to spend on food and there is some shoreline fish. Well, now you have that thought process where it goes, oh, that's actually some very fast food gathering. So it's really cool seeing some of the new maps out there.
Yeah, you also get the best players, on these maps that have a lot of potential, and maybe they might not be perfect, but after this weekend, Adney can look at all the games and be like, okay, maybe there's a few too many sheep on here. What can I do about this, right? And just improve it for the future. So
I saw a roost TC with double bore on either side, right next to either side, and I was like, oh my gosh. I actually ended up losing with that, so it was very shocking. But that was just one where I was like, that is like the dream. It seems like.
yeah, so pretty excited to see how that goes this weekend. Obviously, an important weekend because it's the last weekly tournament before the monthly, and as you can see, like on the points table here, if you can have a good run and get in like top 2, top 4, you pretty much catapult your way all the way up to the top 8 and get yourself in there. So excited to see how this weekend shakes out.
Yeah. And so
Even
my
worth
question.
pointing out, even worth pointing out that just let's say that you are the Mista, and you end up missing the monthly by 1 point. You don't get to the ATR for some other reason, or maybe a better example would be someone like Psyarch, right? You might have a difficult time getting through all of the points that you need to get into that top 8. You could still get really good points for the overall point table. So like if you scroll a little bit up here, you're going to have an overview tab that actually has the point tables for all of the, like a little bit below. Right where the table was, just a tiny bit up.
Oh, there we go. Overview. Aha.
Yeah. And here you can see that Beastie Marine, Lauren Lennox, those are the ones that qualify for RBW already. And you would have the Viper here, but he doesn't have any points. But he is qualified still. From here, 2 other players are going to qualify. And we have June, July, August, and September are each going to give 2 players. So you're going to have 8 players from here that are going to be moving on, and then 2 more from the overall table. Yep. So if you're Psyarch and you manage to stay within like that top 10, you're almost guaranteeing yourself a spot. Even if you don't make any of the monthlies, if you're getting really good points on the weeklies, you're potentially guaranteeing yourself a spot for RBW anyway. So they have a lot to play with, even if it's not the monthly itself.
And then I think they're taking the best 6 weeks because they wanted to give players kind of the option to where they didn't have to play every week. Because I know, especially the Australians and some of the Asian Asian countries, it's tough.
One thing we didn't mention there was also in the monthlies, the people who qualified don't participate in the monthlies as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
So each time that 2 additional people come in, when we look at this list in August, let's just say, now we're going to see the first, or maybe not the first names, but a lot more names on the list greened out or redded out that say, hey, you can't participate in these monthlies. Some of these other people are going to get the opportunity to.
Yeah.
Yep. Very cool. So I really like how it's structured. So definitely fun to watch going forward. I think I've covered everything I wanted to. So
I just had one last question. Was with the upcoming map changes with
Mm.
Wololo, do you have any plans? Obviously, I know you said Friday is more like the for fun ones, but do you have any plans on updating and adding the map pool for Warchief as, we continue to see some of these maps maybe become more of the meta picks or more of these approved picks in tournament play?
Probably. I'll see. If the players tell me, "Hey, I want to be able to practice on these maps," then for sure I'll add them to the pool, which already has like a built-in rotation system. Like every single week, I change them and I
Awesome.
move the maps around and I see what's out there. Obviously, with vanilla maps, it was just the vanilla maps, but with custom maps, I'll probably look around and see what is being made. Obviously, some of the RBW stuff it might get in there at some point. Um, and covering in the like special side of things, there is like a tournament that I've been wanting to make for a while now, and I'll probably need the help from map makers. And that is a territory capture style tournament where you actually
Oh,
have teams that are trying to capture territories, which are actually maps, and you just play out the map to capture the territory. If you all play,
almost like domination in Call of Duty.
it's kind of like the first person shooter that is in Vietnam that has it's like hyper realistic. It's not Red Faction. I don't remember the name of it, but it's like hyper realistic first person shooter that has a game mode that is territory control, where each map you are switching the alliances of the map and stuff like that. So that's one that I've been
Hmm.
trying to make for a long time. It might get distilled into like Friday matches or tournaments, stuff like that.
Oh,
But yeah, I'll certainly look into custom maps for it.
awesome, awesome.
Very cool.
Well, we appreciated you having you on. And if is there anything else that you want to say to any of the people out here that are viewing us today, or I guess in the future here on YouTube?
Um, I guess you know to kind of give a shout out to my personal stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at Sebastian Adico. That is where I post updates on the ATR. I post updates on Age of Empires 4 esports in general. Um, and I will probably be doing Stormgate stuff if anybody's into that. And
I saw you over there on the subreddit.
yeah, I'm jumping on the subreddit as well, talking in the Discord, and just getting the conversation going. Especially, of course, as it comes to esports and the mid tier, the path to pro, and getting players going. And I guess parting words would be just that if you're somebody that right now is on plat or on diamond or on gold, and you're feeling like the grind is getting to you in terms of going into the ladder and you're not sure what to do but just play, don't be mindless about it. Go to AOE4 World, link up your profile, watch the summary of your game, that you see your build order, and just try to tighten that up. Give yourself goals. I want to be able to get feudal by minute 5, before minute 5. And instead of thinking about elo, think about those mini goals. I just want to be able to get this achievement, and that achievement might be get to feudal in 5 minutes. Or I want to be able to harass my opponent by this time, and that's what you do, and that's what you focus on. Because just going through the ladder, as somebody who's played TF2, as somebody who's played Overwatch, who's coached Overwatch, who's done a bunch of things in esports, the ladder system is always going to grind you down and it's going to get you to feel like horrible. So don't take it as practice and go into tournaments, be it low elo legends, be it the Warchief Club, the Strongest Cup, whatever tournament system you like, and just play there to actually have fun. The ladder is just there for you to practice for that.
Awesome, awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for hopping on, and I think that's gonna do it for us. And so, anybody watching, we will see you all next week. Thanks for watching.
So
See you later. Yep.
Later.
Bye.